Alright folks, Pirate Stu here. Today I'm going to show you how to put a horn on your Kubota tractor. So to start this project, we're going to need a horn. I got this off of Amazon.com and it even comes with some wiring diagrams there. Basically we're just going to go from the battery to the horn to a switch. Pretty simple stuff. And this one here, well, it doesn't say what decibel it is on this one, but it was like, I think 117 decibels or something. At any rate, we'll test it out before we mount it on the tractor, make sure it's loud as we want it to be. And then we got this handy dandy little switch. Again, got that off Amazon, and it's got a nice little picture of a horn there so you know what it's for. So we got the switch. This is just some old 2 conductor wire I had laying around. We'll need a pair of wire cutters and wire strippers, which in my case is normally just a pocket knife, and we'll get this project going. Alright, so I'm going to start by stripping some ends off here that I can connect to the battery. Just going to cut the insulation off the end of these wires, and eventually I'm going to put some lugs on here that I can attach to the battery nice and neat, but for testing purposes I'll just leave it like this for the moment. Alright, I'm going to strip the ends of the conductor coming out of the horn here so I can attach my wire to from the battery to it. And the next thing I'm going to do, again for testing purposes, I'm just going to connect these 2 wires to the horn wires. I'll just twist them together for right now, and then this way I can hook the other ends to the battery. There won't be a switch. Just as soon as I touch to the battery, it'll honk, and I can make sure it's as loud as I want it to be. All right, so here's my battery. I'm going to show you how to get to the battery here in just a second, but I don't need my switch at this moment. I'm just going to physically connect this to the battery. All right, so here's my horn. I'm just going to set this aside for the moment, and I'm going to connect one of these to the ground wire. It doesn't have to be perfect for these purposes. And I'm just going to touch it to the positive, and it should honk. And it does. So, but that's really not what I want to do. I want to start the tractor and then do it and make sure it's going to be loud enough, because there ain't no sense in me taking time to install this if nobody's going to be able to hear it. So let me go start the tractor. Alright, I think that might work. We'll give it a shot, and so the next thing we got to do is figure out where it is we want to mount this. I want to put it somewhere where it's going to be kind of audible, and so that means I probably don't want to put it underneath the cowling, the engine cowling, because that's going to muffle it. So we're going to look and see if we can find some place to put it. Alright, first thing we're going to need to do for this horn video is we're going to have to raise our bonnet here, or our hood, and we start by pulling this pin out and pushing our big brush bar here forward. The next thing we're going to do is actually pop the hood. We're going to do that by reaching in here and pulling this pin. Now, if you get up underneath there, you can look and you can see there's this pin right here. You pull that, and voila, your hood comes up, gives you access to the battery and all that kind of fun stuff. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to pull this screen piece off here. There's a bolt right here. I've already loosened it so I can get to it by my hand, with my hand. And the easiest way to do this is to just pull this out. There's a little tab there. There's a little tab there that fits in the hole. There's a tab. There's a tab up front here. You can slide that out. And then lastly, there's a little plastic post piece that looks like that fits in that hole right there. So to put it back together, you put that piece back in that hole, slide this slot or this tab back in that slot, slide the back slot in, and then put that bolt back on. So the other thing I have to consider is where I'm going to put this switch. Now, you might think it might be nice to put it here on the dash somewhere, but I'll tell you what, I reached up underneath there. There's not a lot of room to work with, and drilling a nice round hole into that curved surface might be a little bit of an issue. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to find an alternative place to mount it that's going to make it easy and not also ruin the chassis of the tractor. So here's what I've come up with. Obviously I want to have it someplace where it's nice and easy to get to. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it right here. It's right by the ignition switch, so it's easy to reach. And this is just plastic, which makes it easy to put a hole through, and I think it will work well. All right, now remember I said I needed some place to mount my horn where it wasn't going to be muffled, and so we just talked about mounting my switch to this because this is just a plastic piece. And I think what I want to do is I'm just going to mount the horn here. It's going to point outwards from the tractor. It's not going to protrude too far, and it shouldn't inhibit the working of my bucket arm or anything. So I think that'll work pretty good. That'll also make it easy to wire this right into the switch, and then we just got to run a wire up and feed it into the cowling here at some point and get it to the battery. But that should be pretty easy to do. All right, so we've done a couple things here. First thing is I took the bracket off my horn here. There were just a couple little screws that held that on. And the reason I did that is because I want to be able to put that where I want it to go, and then I'm going to take the Sharpie and I'm going to mark the holes like that so that I know where to drill in the plastic where I'm going to mount that. And I went through my bins of washers and nuts and bolts, and I got a couple here that will work for these two holes right here. They're small enough to go through the hole, and the head is big enough not to go through the hole. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for. And I picked a drill bit that's slightly larger than the diameter of the bolt I'm using. So that way I can drill the hole, and this will just go in it nicely and be the right size. And so one other thing I wanted to point out on this switch is it's actually got screws on the back to where I don't have to worry about soldering the wires on here. It's a solderless connection. I can just put the wire through there and then screw these down and tighten it up. That will make that convenient. I don't have to worry about running a soldering iron out to the tractor. And the other thing I did was I got a Forstner bit here. These are known for drilling really good holes. And I had one that it's just the right size to where the Forstner bit will not go through there. That tells me that the Forstner bit's bigger than the hole, which is what I need. But as you can see, it's not bigger than the nut. So it's just the right size. So we will go drill some holes and then get this mounted up. So this is where I was wanting to mount the bracket for the horn. The only problem is if I felt back up underneath there, I can't get back there because there's a big plate. So I decided I could mount it over here, and because I can reach to the back of that, and there's nothing in the way, so I can have the screws protruding through there. Now this is going to stick out a little bit, make it a little bit harder to get in this side of the tractor, but that's really not an issue because you got the lever and stuff here on this side that makes it hard to get in this side of the tractor anyway, so this really isn't going to complicate things a whole lot. So we drilled the holes here. We're going to mount this up, and I am going to need to drill another hole right here so that the wire can pass through. That way I don't have to worry about it. Actually, I don't even have to do that because this is so close. I'll just have it go up underneath there anyway. So I'm not even going to drill another hole for the wire since it can just go right underneath there. So we'll take our bolt with our lock washer, put that through there, put the nut on the back, come come back with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers and tighten those up nice and tight. Alright, so for this one we're going to put our Forstner bit in. And before we drill, again, we're going to figure out where our switch needs to go and make sure there's nothing on the back side that's going to prevent it from going in there. So I want to put it right there, and sure enough, there's nothing on the back side that's going to be an obstacle to that. So I'm just going to go ahead and drill that, and hopefully I can get the drill bit in there without the steering column getting in the way. We're going to see. And I really can't do that real well, but let me take a look at this. Alright, so my plastic cover that I'm wanting to mount the horn button to, I didn't have enough clearance over here between the steering wheel and this to really get a good shot at getting a straight hole drilled in there. So I looked up underneath here, and there's a plate, and there was 3 10mm holes or bolts in there. This guy here and 2 other ones just like them. So those 3 holes that you see there, that's where they went. I already took them out. Now this will move up quite a bit, which will give me enough clearance to be able to drill a hole in here, and then we'll slide it back and put those bolts back in place to hold this down. But that should work for you. So now we're going to drill the hole for our switch in that plastic cover over there. There we go. We'll put our switch in. Alright, make sure our switch goes in. It does. Put our screw on the back, make sure our horn's pointed the way we want it. Alright. The plate's where it should be. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this switch back out because I don't have the wires hooked up to it. And it's just going to make it easier to hook those on there. Screw this back down. Alright, so that's secured. Time to get some wire out. Alright, so one side of the switch needs to go to ground, and so I've got a terminal here that will fit over one of those 10mm screws that or bolts that we took out that's holding this cover on. Now, even though it screws into the plastic cover, it goes through the metal plate here, which should be connected to the whole tractor, which the entire chassis of the tractor should be ground. So we're going to hook one side of the switch up to a short little wire that's going to go to this lug, which is going to fit on this bolt, which is just going to screw into this chassis plate. Alright, so we're just going to put the wire into this lug. We got some wire crimpers here. Squish that down. Two-handed. Yeah. Alright, just make sure the wire doesn't come out. It's nice and tight, and we'll attach this to the bolt and screw it back on there. Now that I got this attached, I'll need to run it over here to the switch. So I'm just going to measure off enough. We'll reach over there, and then we'll cut this, strip the end, and then connect it to the switch.